Hello there, this is Cool Talk Talks, and this is John Francis giving my input about Snow White. You probably heard about the fiasco that Snow White, the remake, is now playing in empty theaters across the world. A film that cost about $250 to $270 million to make, plus about $100 million more in marketing and production. And it made about $43 million here in the United States, another 44, I believe, worldwide. So it's been pretty bad, and the reviews are horrible. Now, the problems began from the get-go. I'm going to talk about the storyline that they chose in a bit, but I want to touch on Rachel Zegler first, because she's kind of the scapegoat to all of this, and I'll talk about what I mean. But in choosing Rachel Zegler, you're choosing a loose cannon. When they made West Side Story, which was the big break that Rachel Zegler got, she's Colombian, right? But she made some statements with West Side Story saying that she was a privileged Latina because she was light-skinned. I don't recall if she ever said white or not. But around that same time, she was also attacking Gina Carano, who was a Disney favorite around that time. And the attacks got worse. People joined in. Eventually, Gina Carano was fired. She made comments about Jeremy Renner because of some allegations that were made against Jeremy Renner, allegations that were proved to be either false, inconclusive, or exaggerated. We don't know. They were withdrawn. But she was brought on board to be Snow White. Now, from the get-go, a lot of people were tired of the race swapping and all of that. They consider her not white or not white enough to play Snow White. And this is on the heels of other films like Little Mermaid and so forth, where a lot of race swapping was going on. Now, Bob Iger wanted to celebrate Snow White. It's the first animated full-feature film that has ever been made. It's a classic. And the original title of the first one was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And apparently he wanted to do the same here. Along comes Peter Dinklage at the time. This is about 2 years ago. Peter Dinklage says that to put dwarves in a movie is feeding on the stereotype of these dwarves living in a cave like they were leprechauns and all that. And he kind of poo-pooed the whole idea. My personal opinion is that Peter Dinklage was going to be hired by Disney, wasn't hired by Disney, and then he made this statement. I don't know. But based on that statement, Disney decided to retract no more dwarves. And suddenly it became Snow White and the Seven Magical Creatures. And a photograph was released showing everybody these seven magical creatures, and everybody just lost it. It looked so ridiculous. Everybody laughed. Okay. On the heels of that, Rachel Zegler comes out making comments in press interviews and so forth, stating that this Snow White was going to be different, not like the old one. The old one was dated. In this film, she's not going to be saved by the prince. The old movie was outdated, that the actor, the male lead actor, Andrew Burnap, who plays the love interest, well, there might not even be a love interest because that's Hollywood, baby. She said that he might be written out of the film completely. Now, she came across so entitled, so narcissistic. It just gave everybody a bad feeling in their mouth. It's sort of like, it's not what you say, but it's also how you say it. So Bob Iger had to come in there, jump in, and do damage control. Bob Iger being the studio head of Disney. I cut Rachel slack, or I used to cut Rachel slack a little. Let me rephrase that. I used to cut Rachel Zegler some slack at the beginning because I figured she's young, 23, I believe, and she did not write or direct the film. In fact, I considered her collateral damage. Bob Iger and the studio heads are the ones that greenlit this film. They took the script, they read the script, they said, yeah, this is a story that we're going to go on. And what's going on with Disney and a lot of movie studios today is that they are taking the story and putting it in the back burner, and they're catering to pandering, checking off boxes with diversity and so on. And diversity is great. I have no problem with diversity. I have a problem when the story suffers because of diversity. So they're checking off boxes. They're looking at the script. They look at it. And I always wonder, how do these movies get made? Some of these movies that come out very, very badly. And then they have to reshoot the film and spend millions of more dollars. Doesn't anybody sit down and read the script and say, this is no good, let's rewrite the story and rewrite the story until we have a good story? Instead, they're shooting the story that they have, showing it to audiences. The audience hates it, so they reshoot scenes, and next thing you know, you got this jigsaw puzzle mumbo jumbo, and it has to be released to the audience sooner or later. I think the powers that be don't really care so much about story. That's the only conclusion that I can pick up on. Disney has ruined Marvel. They've ruined Indiana Jones. They ruined Star Wars. They ruined Doctor Who. They ruined Buzz Lightyear. The list goes on and on and on. And it's partly because of the agenda that Disney has chosen to implement. Now, when it comes to men, and Disney has something against men, especially white men, if you notice. I don't have time to get into it, but go into all the Disney films that have come out, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, or whatever, in the last, say, 5 years. And it turns out to be white males are either the idiots, the dummies, or they tend to be the villain. And one mistake that Disney is making, and I feel bad about, is that little boys do not have heroes in Disney films. We've always had the princesses throughout Disney history, Cinderella, Moana, and so on. But we also had boy heroes too when it comes to the Jungle Book, Hercules, Aladdin, and so on. We had both. Not anymore. Not anymore. Boys are they're in the back burner. They've been pushed aside. And a lot of times it's the men that buy the tickets. And when it comes to things like Star Wars, it's the young teenage boys that see the movie over and over and over again. Disney's not looking at that. I don't know who their publicist, who markets this. I have no idea. But anyway, what's been going on in the last couple of years, Disney stock has plummeted, Disney parks are empty, and Disney movies, for the most part, are not selling. I say that for the most part because the 3 highest grossing films of 2024 that made over $1 billion were Moana 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Inside Out 2. Okay, all Disney films, all made over $1 billion. So there is power in the mouse at the moment, still. But back to Snow White. The magical creatures, people didn't like it. So Disney decided we got to reshoot the scenes. We got to bring back the dwarves. But wait a minute. Peter Dinklage says that dwarves are stereotypes. So what did they do? They bring in CGI dwarves. And I hear that the CGI dwarves in the theater, when on the big 40-foot screen, is so nightmarish that little kids have been crying. Anyway, I don't know why they didn't just bring in the dwarves. Just hire a bunch of little actors, little people, I should say. I hear that Dopey, among the 7 dwarves, Dopey actually talks in the movie, and they're taking an approach where he wasn't talking, but he can talk. He was suffering for something that today we call in children selective mutism. It is a condition. I don't know if the little kids in the theater could follow that, because in the end, Snow White is made for kids. Also, the character of Sleepy, they don't focus on him too much because they don't want to trigger bad feelings in little kids that suffer narcolepsy. Okay? And forget about True Love's Kiss. For True Love's Kiss to bring back Snow White, if you don't know the ending of Snow White, I'm not going to get into it, but True Love's Kiss brings her back in one instant, and you cannot have a kiss without consent. So what the movie does is they have a little song where Rachel Zegler's, or Snow White, states, a kiss could bring me back, and she gives her consent before it even happens. Something that, for me, didn't really make any sense. But anyway, now, outside of all that, the movie has been reshot, reshown, rejected, reshot, reshown. In the middle of all that, because of what's going on in Gaza, Rachel Zegler decided to throw out some comments on the social media, and she did make comments such as "Free Palestine," therefore alienating a lot of people in the audience, including her co-star, Gal Gadot, who happens to be Israeli. And then came the election, and Rachel Zegler came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. Fine, she did that, not a problem. But then she told all the Trump supporters that she invited them to unfollow her, that she didn't need their business. Well, that sense of entitlement really rubbed people the wrong way. And then when Donald Trump won, she made a comment that she wished that all Trump supporters would never have any peace. Bob Iger had to call her out and tell her to explain herself, so she came out and said something here and there. But all in all, a little too late. Snow White in front of small audiences was not doing well. So they decided to have no premieres, no red carpet, at least not with the press. They did a couple of events where they had a lot of little girls dressed like little princesses on a red carpet. Press was not invited, no journalists whatsoever. And they released the movie. And how much did it make? As I mentioned, it made about $43 million this weekend. And my personal opinion is the movie was probably going to fail anyway. Movie going is expensive. It costs a lot of money for a family of four to go to the movies nowadays. So it's not enough if the movie is doing okay or if the movie is okay. It has to be great to merit people dishing out that kind of money and going out. The economy is bad. Let's face it. So, and also audiences have the option of waiting and then they can stream the movie later. Add to that, and this is the main point, a perception problem that a lot of people are boycotting Disney, period. Okay, all things Disney, bad. For reasons that I mentioned, the political agenda, the direction that Disney decided to go. Now, my question is, why would you want to remake a classic like Snow White, a classic that is so beloved, and then change the story until it doesn't even look like the original? If you have to stray away that much, why not do one of two things? Either re-release the original Snow White on the big screen, see what happens, or take the storyline that you have in mind, create new characters. You can bring them all in. You can do all the diversity you want. You can choose a storyline that you want. You can have no love interest in the movie if that's the direction you want to go, and you could do that and make a good story. Disney used to make very good stories. But okay, movie came out, bombed. It's not going to make its money back. Now, Bob Iger could sit back and say, well, let's study the matter and see what can we do to remedy this. Instead, what did he do? He took the director, Mark Webb, the director of Snow White, who was also the director of The Amazing Spider-Man, and he was pushed away from Disney. He's not working with Disney anymore. He took one of the writers, Greta Gerwig, who wrote Barbie, who was brought in, okay, female empowerment and all of that. She was brought in to write Snow White. She wrote it, or she was one of the writers of Snow White, and she's been pushed aside. My understanding is anybody who worked in the art direction, production design, costumes, and so on, anybody involved in Disney has been pushed out. The only person not being pushed out in the middle of all this is Bob Iger. Okay? Bob Iger, who's pushing this agenda, and rather than say, perhaps we're not making good stories, he's blaming it on the people that work for him and saying, you are not pushing out the correct execution of those stories. If you dislike the Disney movies, they say you are a racist or you're misogynistic and so on and so forth, okay? That you're out of touch. When in essence, you could say that Disney is very out of touch, as is most of Hollywood, to be honest with you, very out of touch with the movie audience. I don't think they know what we feel, what we think, or maybe perhaps they don't care. So my message to Disney would be, hire back all those old writers, start making good movies again. I don't know what to tell you, okay? I mean, if I was working for Disney, I'd say, okay, let me see the script. I like this. I don't like this. Oh, you're remaking a classic. This is not the classic that you're remaking. You're remaking something else. I don't know. I'm not there. Maybe I should be. Maybe you should be. I can guarantee that you could just walk down the street and pick up anybody out there and say, we got some ideas for you. Come on in. Join Disney. And I would not be surprised if the average person has better ideas than what Disney has come up with. But anyway, tell me what you think. Did you like the movie? Send me your likes or dislikes, or better yet, subscribe. This is Cool Talk Talks.